It's impossible to talk about sculpture without talking about the Morph section. The Morph controller is one of the most unique controllers ever integrated into a soft synth. Morph means transform, and that's exactly what we use it for in sculpture. It can be used to perform transformations, and it could be used to breed new sounds, and everything is done right here on the Morph Pad. Like the material pad up above, the Morph Pad has its own little cursor that you can drag around to make your sonic transformations. Here's how it works. In every corner, there's a morph point, and when you select it, it saves a snapshot of all of these controls. You can set these controls anywhere you like, and the morph point remembers them. Then you move over to point B, and it does the same thing. It remembers a completely different snapshot of all of these controls. And as you keep going around the corners, you can do the same thing for C, and you can do the same thing for D, and you can store one in the center too. Lots of synthesizers and plugins have presets. And actually, these are simply just presets, but these presets have one major difference. You can morph between them. You simply just grab the morph cursor, that little orange ball, and move it around and listen in real time as your sound, your instrument, transforms. And if that wasn't good enough, you can record all of those movements and play them back as timbral changes whenever you hit a key. And if you don't want to set the presets yourself, you can use the point randomizer. And you know how much I love random stuff. The point randomizer, with one click of a button, will randomize most of Sculpture's settings and store completely different random settings for every morph point selected. And these 4 buttons control which morph points will be randomized. You can pick all 5, you can pick just the corners, or you can simply pick the center. I can't wait to show you how this works. But first, let's move on to the Morph Envelope. The Morph Envelope is going to look really familiar to you because it shares a lot of the same controls as the control envelope. Remember how I showed you could record your own control envelopes and store them and use them to control, say, the filter or the wave shaper? The Morph Envelope does kind of the same thing, except it records your movements on the Morph Pad. Here's the record trigger. It works just like the record trigger on the control envelopes. And though these 2 different sections share a lot of the same controls, a lot of the controls are in kind of different places. Like the mode selector. It's here on the Morph Envelope, but on the control envelope, it's over there. Don't be confused by their different locations. You'll notice the same thing happens with timescale, but they both work exactly the same way. You can change the overall time from just a few milliseconds up to many, many seconds. And speaking of milliseconds, you have the millisecond sync and zoom controls. They're exactly the same. The Morph Pad does have a couple of knobs that are different though, and they're located over here. They're called the Morph Envelope controls. These controls allow you to modify and modulate the morph envelopes after they've been recorded. It's like they allow you to morph the morph. The power of the Morph Pad is contained in the ability to set different settings along the corners and center of the Morph Pad and then move this little ball around, and those little movements can be recorded by the Morph Envelope. The Morph section has 2 primary functions. The first one is breeding new instruments or new sounds, and these new sounds evolve from old sounds. Think of it as a combination of synthesis and genetics. The second primary function is to create and record and perform morph envelopes. Now, I'm sure this all sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but it's going to make sense in the next few lessons. In fact, in the next lesson, we're going to learn about breeding. And if you happen to be under 18 years old, make sure that you get your parents to sign the Mac Pro Video breeding consent form and send it back. Attention, Martin Sitter. Let's go morphin'.